I'm Evan DeWald, and I am joined by Tara Lindsley, and we are the voices behind the Unpacked podcast. On the Unpacked podcast, one of the things we love to do is talk about life and storytelling, and sometimes life gets messy and vulnerable and all those things. So we have conversations with counselors, with psychologists, with industry leaders, storytellers, and just regular humans that are making a difference in the world.
Yeah, and we're just hoping to grow and reflect and heal together. So you can find our podcast anywhere you subscribe to your podcasts. New episodes come out every Thursday. Enjoy.
Make sure to like and subscribe. See you there. Hey, Tara.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. We're not together.
I know, it sucks.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, I haven't been feeling great. Some kind of global pandemic or something strikes twice. What are you going to do?
Strikes again. Strikes again.
And so I'm stuck at home. But I'm feeling fine, other than a little bit of a sore throat.
Yeah, and a lower voice.
Yes. I have a very deep, sexy voice. People are going to be able to tell what podcast we recorded this week because my voice is definitely lower.
Yeah, that was I got sick in September, and I can tell all the episodes where I've recovered, but I'm a little nasally. I'm like, you can hear it.
It's in there. None of this has clouded how much fun the weekend was, because I had a great weekend.
Right. Yeah. You didn't get COVID until Monday.
Yeah. And it appears that I didn't give anybody COVID, which is even better. But I did get to do leaves in our backyard. Like, our new place has, as you know, has some very large trees that shed a great deal in the fall. And because we always hang out in the backyard, we got to clean up those leaves for our winter fun, party. We're going to turn that place into a winter wonderland back there now. And it was super fun. As you know, I got to have Theo and Ryan came over to help do leaves.
Yeah.
And how fun. All kids should get to play in the leaves like that.
It was memory making moments. That's what I thought.
When
I saw the photos and the videos of you guys jumping in, it looks so fun.
It was exactly how I dreamed it was going to be.
Yeah, that's so good.
I was like, I think Theo will love this. Like, Otto and I went out and Ryan came. And so it was basically just the four of us out there just playing around and raking leaves and using the big blower. Did Ryan tell you he ran the big backpack blower?
Yes. Well, Theo pointed that out to me. And then also they kept talking about riding the tractor.
Yes. Okay. Two things. We put this big blower on his back, which he can barely hold up. So Ryan's holding this thing up so he can have it on his back. And then he pulls the trigger. Well, the thing's got so much pressure, it just spins him in circles.
That's awesome.
I think I have a video of it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I need to see that.
Yeah. Then we played in the leaves like crazy. And then he got to drive the lawnmower. Him and Ryan went out and I did one round with him. And then I was like, no, I think Ryan should do this and I'll rake leaves instead. So Ryan and him drove around and collected up all the leaves. It was pretty fun.
They loved it. You guys have the best yard and so many fun ideas. I was thinking that everybody needs friends who don't have little kids anymore, who want to do really fun things with you.
We're missing that.
Because you and Kristen just create experiences with us to do with our kid. And it's so fun.
It's fun to watch life through the eyes of a little kid.
It really is.
We don't have any more. We have the irritated look. That's what our kids give us, is the irritated look.
Although when Theo is around, all of your kids are the sweetest and want to play with him and make it joyful too. Even Otto, I saw the photos. That kid is smiling in the leaves. Can't hide it.
He definitely had fun and came out and we did a bunch of stuff. I still haven't made a reel. So I need to make a reel out of it. I'll make a reel and make Unpacked a collaborator so people can see how much fun we had. This week, longtime friend.
Yeah.
Longtime friend, second time caller. Cody Anderson joins us.
That's right.
Cody was on when we did a podcast with the Winnipeg boys.
Yeah, that's what you call them.
Yeah, the Winnipeg boys, because they're all younger than me. They're like old pastors already, but they're still younger than me, so I still call them boys.
Yeah. And they have their own podcast too on the Bible, because they're all pastors.
Yeah. Bible Conversations is what it's called. It's one of my things I've been listening to and kind of in lieu of not hearing a lot of sermons.
Yeah, they do a really good job.
Oh, it's so good. So good. The good dose of humor, but then also these like just incredibly insightful observations. So Cody's on that one too. And it's really good. It's really, really good. But in this episode, we talk about a bunch of things, some things that he's going through. We end up talking about grief, which I think is something that a lot of us are going through. He shared a little bit about some of his music.
Yeah, he's a musician. So we wanted to talk to him a little bit about what that is like for him and writing songs and
how that plays out. He's an Enneagram 4, but according to him, he doesn't know anything about the Enneagram. Although,
we'll see.
For somebody who doesn't know anything about the Enneagram, like, dang, did a pretty good job of faking it, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, and what's been interesting is in our Enneagram series, it's been hard to find men who are willing to talk about their numbers.
Yeah. But then you get them on and then they start talking about their number.
That's what I was going to say, is like, it was great. So, it wasn't an Enneagram episode, but he definitely has some wisdom for us around that.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the songs that he wrote a long, long time ago, I still love, was written, after coming back from Haiti. So we end up talking a bunch about Haiti today as well.
Yeah. Which maybe we should just like explain a little bit of what's going on right now in Haiti.
Oh, it is not good in Haiti.
Yeah. It's a place we both love. We work with some people who do some projects there with the denomination. Yeah.
There is so much unrest around the particular leader that's leading right now. There's a fuel shortage. The subsidy for fuel that used to be present through the Venezuelan government has been removed. And so the gas prices have just gone crazy up. Mm-hmm. And that has rose up some of the strength of some of the gangs that are present in Haiti. And so it has become, that's pretty much the skinny on what I know of it. There's more to it. Obviously, I could give a much more in-depth thing, but I encourage people to just check that out in World News. And
yeah, it's really heartbreaking. Like lockdown situation, kids not in school, difficulty to get food, medical care, all of that.
Yeah, when you add this on top of what is already, in a lot of ways, a country living right on the edge of real, like, devastating health challenges like cholera and like all of those things, it's scary. They definitely need our thoughts and prayers these days. So the song that he writes is maybe even more suiting and more fitting for the period of time that Haiti is going through now. He wrote that song, I believe it was after the
earthquake.
Yeah. So lots to think about in this podcast. It's Cody, so we laugh too. We have a good time kind of working through some of these topics, and really do hope that it is helpful and insightful for people who listen, and it provokes thought and growth in you. No, hey, I'm still taking clients too. I could say that.
Yeah,
people can check us out. Check out our website actually at just theunpackedpod.ca, and all of our previous episodes are there. You got a whole collection of Enneagram ones there. That you can also go over to the coaching side and see how you can get in touch with me if you want to do some individual or corporate coaching. I'd love for that to happen. Anyways, enjoy this episodes, and thanks for liking and subscribing, and the shares. The shares are really awesome. Anyway, I hope that you're having a great week wherever it is that you're listening to this. And if you're running on the treadmill, run faster. Faster.
Or drive safely.
Yeah, or drive safe. Enjoy. What?
Hey.
Hi. That was...
What do you mean? Oh,
yeah.
What's oh mean?
I didn't hear a thing you just said.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good. We were just admiring your cross.
Oh, yeah. It is, makes me look really good, eh?
Very pastoral of you.
There you go.
Yeah. That's just the FCC back of the church there. That's all that is.
Yeah, I figured it was. Dude, how are you doing?
Oh, man. It's like, you know what pastoral ministry, like in September, it's like you feel guilty for all August and July that you were a lazy whatever, and then you decided to plan something for every freaking day.
Yeah.
Till April.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. September's are always really calm for me. What do we call him? We call him a long-time listener, first-time friend, long-time listener, other way around. Long-time friend, first-time listener. Cody Anderson is here with us.
I like it.
You got your like radio host voice on or something.
I need my radio. I say this almost always when I think about who we're going to get to chat with, because I'm a 7 and I think everything should be fun. But I woke up this morning thinking I get to talk to my old friend Cody, and it's going to be a fun day to kind of hear a little bit what's kind of going on. So we've known each other for a little while.
Yeah, we have actually. I was thinking about this, Evan. Like Tara, maybe you don't know this, but Evan would have been, I mean, I tell this story all the time, but I have a very distinct memory of being at Covenant Heights Bible Camp, and I would have been, I don't know. Evan, when you were on team, what year would that have been? Do we want to share?
Yes.
94?
Yeah. So I was grade 4 around there. And I do remember, you there. I remember Kristen was on team, and this has been a thing for you forever. And I've always said it. I mean, you just have never stopped smiling, in my opinion, as far as I'm sure that's not the truth, but I remember it back then. And I remember, that was sort of the starting place of our relationship. And obviously over the years, things have flourished, and we got to know each other as, neat as colleagues, right. At some point, and be able to share about ministry together and life in a different way. So it has been a long time.
Yeah. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Pretty much my entire adult life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. And that is the kind of the cool part, is that at some point, you became a pastor and had started coming to the pastor functions instead of the junior higher events that I was leading and you were coming to. So it's weird.
It is weird. And you know what? I remember some of those early events. I mean, I started at FCC here in 2006, which is already a long time ago now. And I remember coming in as a new pastor to, let's say, pastor spouse retreat, and being like, what is going on? You had some of these old guard guys, and I'm like, I am just a baby here. And then, you were kind of my bridge between, it's like, I felt like I connect with Evan, but he'd been around, he had some cred around there. And so he was like my liaison between Albert Josephson and myself, because Albert Josephson thought I was just a little boy that needed to, get things figured out. So
isn't that funny?
Yeah, that is.
I was the bridge between the old guys and I still have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it is interesting, because I am in the middle age demographic of even well, I guess I say I was in the middle of the age demographic for the pastors.
Yeah.
And we've got to do some fun things together, not just when you were a kid or even just going out to pastors and spouses and stuff, but we've got to travel together. We got to go to Haiti together, which I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about today, and just some of those things. But tell us a little bit about where you're at and what you're up to and what your role is, and you're a dad, you're like all those things. Give us the spiel.
Yeah. So I'm a father of 4 kids, 13, 11, 9, and 6 years old. So we're kind of in the not the super needy 5 and under stage, but transitioning. I have a teenager who's dealing with different things, and yet our youngest are still, in elementary school. And so they're all in school now full time, and that's been really good. They're all completely different children, and I feel completely inadequate as a parent most of the time, trying to figure out how to do this. And we live in Winnipeg, in the heart of the continent, which I know gets a lot of razzing, especially from you folks out in Alberta. It's like, what? Why would anybody want to live there? And it's a good question sometimes. Sometimes I do wonder the same thing, but
like January is right. Basically the time when you're like, what was I thinking?
January is a struggle, but you know what? There are some really neat things anywhere you live. It doesn't matter. Even Saskatchewan, I think you could make a good life.
Even there.
but you know what? I've started to really, you know, and for many years I've seen the real goodness of this physical place where I live, and it's a unique place. If you've never been to this area of the continent, it is a bit of the bridge. I'll use that word again, between Western Canada and Eastern Canada. You know, where I live, there's some people that think, and Eastern Canadians think differently than Western Canadians.
Do. Yeah.
And where we live is sort of like this gathering place of both. And so you have some different mentalities, old East thinking, and then sort of new West thinking. And so that's an interesting dynamic we have here. I have worked as a pastor at Faith Covenant Church, as I said, since 2006. So that's been a huge part of my life, obviously my adult life. And this happened to be the church that I grew up attending. And the plan was not to do what I'm doing now, but really just sensed a call into that in my early 20s, and specifically a call to remain here. And so that's been an interesting part of my life too. I've always been one that's been a little more spontaneous, like to, you know, try different things. And so the notion of staying rooted, as I have been for so long, is still a little bit foreign to me. But I'm kind of living into it. And I happen to marry someone who's very rooted. And so maybe that has something to do with it. She's definitely rubbed off on me, but we've enjoyed planting and, you know, having roots deep here in this area with our family.
Yeah. And other unique factors. You are the pastor at the church your dad planted.
Yeah.
And your partner in pastoral ministry is your brother.
I know. Yeah. It makes sound like we're a cult here.
That's a bit of a cult.
Yeah.
It does. I know when people hear that, usually, you know, when they hear, oh, the church that your dad planted, so there's some sort of like nepotism going on there. And no, it wasn't like that. There was a pastor between him and when we entered in, you know, being in ministry with your brother, it is, you know, when people hear that, they immediately have these, if they have siblings, they're like, there's no chance I could do that. That seems like a total train wreck. And I'll be honest, some days it seems like a total train wreck. I mean, Eric and I are so vastly different, and it causes some pretty good bouts, you know, in ministry as we think through things. But it also probably is our saving grace that we're so different. And I think you guys are big on the Enneagram. He's a number 7. I'm a number 4. Yeah. And so we have some interesting dynamics and actually some things to teach each other if we're willing to listen to the other, which if you have siblings, you don't always want to listen to what your sibling has to speak truth into your life. But the more years have gone by, I've found that's been some of the fruit that's come from this. You know, it's a labor and it's hard sometimes. But I think we're actually able to speak some truth into each other's lives, which is a real gift.
Like, yeah, we're not going to talk too much Enneagram today, just so because we do that a lot. But seriously, some say that actually a 7 needs a 4 in their life, and a 4 needs a 7 in their life.
Yeah, I believe the latter statement for sure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. One has the tendency to look towards the very optimistic side of things, to their detriment at times, and the other sometimes has the tendency to look at the really darkest things to their detriment at times.
You're talking about the 7 looking at the dark things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm a 7. That's why you always saw me smiling all the time. This is complete fake, but right? It's like
I feel like my foundation's crushed from beneath. Can't be fake.
You weren't happy all the time. Life wasn't light and easy all the time. No, I do think you're right. Like it's a good observation though, right? To be like, who are the people in my life that might, in your case, if it's your brother, like that's a challenging thing because it's family. But outside of family, like there are sometimes people where it's like, no, I actually need these humans that see things differently. Like even Tara was talking about before, just like, well, I never encounter anyone who isn't like me. If I'm not a part of a community, I just get to choose the people who are just like me all the time.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, one quick example of that, I mean, just the way that Eric's spoken in my life in this last season, you know, number 4 is, yeah, we do go to sometimes dark spaces and we think about things pretty heavily. And we've had some heavy things going on in our family with our 9-year-old daughter. Actually, it was a year ago last weekend, we noticed something wrong in her ear. And long story short, found out she had this thing called Langerhans cell histiocytosis, which if you Google it, it's sort of split between it's a cancer, it's not a cancer, but it functions like one. So, brass tacks is she's been for a year going through chemotherapy at Cancer Care Manitoba. And I've actually really needed Eric's, and it's not just, fake positivity, but I've needed his perspective to get outside of myself. I mean, that's a pretty heavy situation that we're dealing with. And it is, we have to go through the grief and go through the process. But I have really, it's been like balm for me to be able to have people in my life that gives me a perspective that gets out of that. Because it is something we're dealing with, but the world is bigger than this. And we need to be reminded of that, that there are some good things happening in life. There's some victories. There are some things that are going well. And it's easy for me as a number 4 to just like never look at that stuff. So actually in this last season, I've been more thankful than ever for people like Eric, number 7s in my life, can remind me of those things and kind of pull me out, draw me out of that.
Yeah, that the sun's still going to come up in the morning.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You take for granted, but there's people that sometimes that's hard to just like get yourself out of. It seems dark all the time. And so this has been a season I've been especially grateful for him. Don't tell him.
No, I won't tell.
He probably doesn't listen.
I doubt he listens to this.
He's not listening to this.
Well, not your episode anyways.
Yeah, he's not going to listen to your episode.
Cody, no.
Yeah. We can edit out all the good things you say about your family too. It's no problem if you want. You're like, no, I don't want him to get a fat head over it. But no, it is true that we do need these individuals and people in our lives that give us unique perspectives, even on how we can go through pain or grief or all those kinds of things. And so this is your daughter. How old is she? Which one?
So her name's Lucy, and she is our second youngest. And she's just started grade 4 this year, and she is 10 years old. And so, yeah, she's a sweet little girl. It's been interesting to walk through this with her.
Yeah. How do you, like, not to pry you, and you can only tell us what you want to tell us, but how have you seen her deal with like all of the things? Like, does she know all of what's happening? Are you keeping, like, how do you do that?
Yeah, that's been one of the trickiest parts for us is, it's hard to process grief when you're in the middle of it for anybody, adults even. But for someone who's 9, 10 years old, whose brain's still forming very much and is hard to, I ask her sometimes, I say, Lucy, the last weekend, I said, this was a year ago. We went into the emergency room. Do you remember that? What that was like, getting the CT scans? And, her response was to just change the subject, actually. And it's been interesting to see how personalities come out and the way that you deal with some of those hard things. And if I'm honest, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm probably there's the physical reality of what she's got going on. But as a 9, 10-year-old going through that, who will eventually, be in their teenage years, and she'll remember this. You better believe that. And so that's been my biggest concern, is how do we help her process this mentally, emotionally, as someone who hasn't had those things formed yet in her. And so it's something we're still trying to figure out. I don't have the answers. So
yeah, it's like, I think every parent, this is more serious than this is a bigger example than I ever had to experience. But I think, every parent doesn't want to be the cause of their adult children's therapy. And I think we all have this like low level fear that we're like messing up our kids. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that, is this the traumatic event that's going to alter the way they see the world, the rest of their lives, all those, we put a lot of weight on that. And then how do we walk them through those things, whether that's something outside of your control, which this is most definitely outside of your control. But what you do with it now is the question. And there's no doubt in my mind that you guys are doing it well. But probably not every day.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something as I've been thinking about grief as a whole. I think so much of grief, when I pinpoint it, it's actually rooted in a loss of control. And so any situation where there's just like, you can't control it, that's grief actually you're experiencing there. It's not just North Americans that like it. People love to control things and control destinies of things. And so when you have situations so vastly out of your control, you immediately are pushed into this moment of grief. And that's why so many people over the pandemic were so depressed, actually, is because here's a thing that nobody can figure out. The best scientists in the world trying to figure things out, and nobody can really corner it at the time. And it's like people are in grief. And so we've definitely been experiencing that. And you're right, like we don't do it well every day, but we're seeking our best to like care for the emotional side of our daughter. And that's been tricky.
Yeah, It is really tricky. Like as someone who also has a medical issue, it took me, like I've had my diagnosis for 5 years and it's lifelong. It's not curable or anything like that, but it's manageable and I can live a relatively healthy life. But I came across something, I don't know, a few months ago, I think maybe 6 or 7 months ago, that was like trauma. Like I wasn't really associating a lot of trauma around it. And this may or not be helpful, but when you experience something medical in your body, where your body and my body attacks itself specifically, that it is actually no longer a safe place for you. And it can be quite jarring. And that is a form of medical trauma. And I was like, oh, I think I have that. And it was 5 years later before I could really even start to look at the grief and acceptance of like, oh, this is lifelong. And it's not just like, oh, what's the next? Because when you're in something medical wise, sometimes it's just like, what's the next thing? Like, let's just get to the next point. And then there's some relief and there's still grief along the way. But now I'm finding a different level of acceptance and trying to feel some of the waves of grief of things that have happened and even be kind of resituated in my body to go, well, it's still safe. It is actually still safe, but it's okay to be triggered by walking through the hospital or the smells of the hospital or the traffic lights leading up to the hospital that I spent 1.5 years going to for treatments. So all of those things were like, oh, I actually can learn to manage and cope and deal with the waves, but it's sometimes not even in the moment of years ago when I was doing it.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that we've been learning, what you said, I just said, it was 1 year ago, Labor Day weekend, all this stuff was going down. I had a friend at that same weekend that was diagnosed with something pretty heavy. And I've been doing a lot of reading on how body keeping track of things, post-traumatic events. And I both Dana and I last weekend were like, man, we have some weird things going on with our body. And I actually remembered that these things happened 1 year previous. And the things that were happening in our body physically were the same things we were experiencing 1 year ago. And it wasn't really in our consciousness, but the body was just like reliving this thing. It was the weirdest experience. So I think there's something to that.
Yeah. And I was like, we were talking about my time painting boards gives me a chance to listen to podcasts. I legitimately listened to a podcast yesterday. Yeah. And in the podcast, they were talking about the woman who was speaking was sharing that, she had an event happen in her life that was very negative. It was very sudden. And it was exactly 3 years earlier. And she was like, my body remembered. And like, I have all the same feelings I had 3 years ago, and it was a breakup of her marriage. And when my husband came home and when it all hit, like, I remember all the feelings. And she's like, and I think I have to just do it. Like, I don't think I can just fix this so that next year at this time it won't happen. And
yeah, it's wild how your body remembers those things, but it can activate so many things. So if you're not like, you're noticing it and then you're like, what is going on? So now some of the work that I've been doing is like, okay, so there's certain things that I know now are gonna set me off. So how can I breathe through that? How can I manage it? But I think you're right. It's like, it's going to hit every time.
Yeah.
And maybe less as the time goes by.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that because I'm not a crazy person. Then you guys are. I've been thinking that this is a thing, so you guys have confirmed it. Okay.
I do not think you're crazy at all. No. I also would say I think you're like the path towards healing is being able to call something what it actually is, especially when it's in something inside of us, our emotional system or how we're operating or those kinds of things. So being able to name what's actually happening is seriously the path to like. Well, healing from it, but also knowing kind of how to manage it. So being able to call this grief instead of, some other emotion, like being able to name the actual emotion. It's funny. I'm sure you noticed, but like I started to smile as soon as you said grief. I was like, oh man, are we doing grief again? Like, how come grief keeps coming up in
all this out?
Every conversation I'm having? It seems to have grief connected to it, But I was telling somebody the other day that grief is weird because as a 7, I would prefer to keep my emotions completely out of everything. That's hard work for me to include emotions. And because it's hard work, I don't feel like I'm very good at it. So when I started even realizing that the 7 is avoiding any difficult, painful, emotional experience, then I was like, well, no, I want to be authentic. I want to be fully present with people, and I want to be true to what's actually going on here, not just an avoidance machine, that I'm always avoiding something. And so I was like, no, I need to figure out my feelings. So I was like, okay, what are they? So I Googled that, like just Google emotions, how many there are.
As feelers, we're both like, whoa.
Oh yeah, you guys are like, oh man, it's so fun. I was like, this 217 in my first Google search, emotions.
No way.
It felt like a personal hell. Like I just arrived at the gates of hell. I was like, holy cow. And it was funny, like Tara's laughing, but like Kristen too, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do some emotions. I'm going to try to learn more about my emotions. And they're about 215. So I'm going to do 3. Like... this logical brain going, I'm going to try to figure out the 3: happy, sad, and mad. Yeah. Those are going to be the 3. I'm going to try to pay attention to when I'm happy, sad, or mad. And it's so weird. Like, I know you guys are both like,
you think that's weird?
Yeah.
Right? And I had to practice them for months. Like waking up in the morning and going, am I happy, sad, or mad in the day? And am I rooted in anger? What's happening today? So much work. It was exhausting for me. And I really do think that is one of those things where it's like, we don't recognize the difference in how others around us are going through life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I phoned you. I was listening to a podcast and somebody starts talking about how you feel these different emotions in your body. And I was like, what the hell are they talking about? I legitimately was like, I do not know what that means. And then this guy goes on and explains like, oh, you feel anxiety here in your chest or down in the pit of my stomach. And I feel this and I feel that, like all these things in your actual body. No idea what they're talking about. So I actually come into the house and say to Kristen and Caroline, my daughter, and I'm like, so I'm just listening to this podcast and they're talking about this, like you can feel emotions in your body. We'll explain the whole thing. I'm like, do you guys, like, is that real? Like, do you guys feel like that? And both of them, they're both 8s, same thing. Like emotionally pretty scary to do emotions. It brings up vulnerability for them. Both of them are like, no, I've never heard of that. Actually, Caroline said, yeah, I feel anger in my fists. She's like trying to be funny. But I think I texted you or I phoned you.
Yeah.
And I was like, so this is what I was just learning on this podcast, blah, blah, blah. I do the whole thing. Tara's like, oh yeah. And she starts explaining all the places she feels her emotions in her body. I was like, you are such a strange person to me.
It wasn't even like What do you mean you don't feel them in your body?
Yeah.
Like that's how opposite it was. I was like, not all the time do I know where it is in my body, but I can feel it happening.
No.
Well, okay. So you guys didn't want to talk about grief. We talked about that. You didn't really want to do the Enneagram. We've been talking about the Enneagram. What do you want to talk about?
Wherever it goes.
Wherever it goes. Mostly we were just excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
But I do think like...
Wait. Do you feel them in your body?
Oh, for sure. But here's the thing though, is I've been a feeler my whole life. So I didn't know there were that many on Google, 217 emotions, but I've been aware of feelings, but I don't think I could articulate, something's happening in my physical body. And in the last year, that's been the first time. And then that's coinciding, like you, Evan, with hearing podcasts or reading about it. And I'm like, first I'm like, this is rubbish. There's no way but then I'm like, no, I'm experiencing something in my body. And could that actually be what's happening? Is that the experiences that I'm having emotionally are translating into some sort of weird physical thing that is now I'm learning, like resurfacing a year later to the day, like that I can't explain. So I think there is, I feel it now, and I'm recognizing, okay, this is what's happening, which is helpful for me at least.
Yeah. Well, and you're in an extreme circumstance of your body taking on a lot too, which is also different than just being like, oh yeah, like my chest feels this way with like heavy with anxiety, or the pit of my stomach when something has happened. Like that's like a little more minor. When you're in a very heavy space, I think that's different too. Your body is reacting, and self-care and like sleep and all those things are really important, so you don't carry them forever.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah. It's wild. Emotions. Rubbish is right. It is funny because I want that. Like in my intellect, my brain knows that I want to be more fully connected to my head, my body, and my emotions until I'm experiencing them. And then I'm like, this is awful. I want to go back to not feeling anything. And then of course it's too late. And that's where grief is a weird thing, right? Because it's like, no, I want to grieve something because I want to be healthy. I don't want to be embittered and angry and all those kinds of things. So I know that the path is through those other ways, but then I get in them and grief is weird. It shows up in anger and confusion, and it shows up in like all of the it's not just one. That's probably how we got to this story. It's not just sad. Grief isn't just sadness. So I'm feeling sad today, so I must be grieving. It's like, no, I'm actually feeling angry today. And it's like you said, I feel angry because all of this is out of my control. Mm-hmm. And this is grief. And not just anger, this is grief. Mm-hmm. And being able to call it for what it really is, I think that's the truth. And anytime we can find ourselves hearing even ourselves and mining for that truth in our own life, I think that is the beginning of growth and freedom from it, being able to set it down, at least the parts of it that we can. So I hope that that's a journey you're able to continue to take, even though, no one wishes that on anybody.
Yeah.
And your own kid.
Yeah. I was just going to say children.
Children is like,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something lighter. Let's
Haiti.
talk about Haiti. How about that? Hey, we went to Haiti. I can't remember what year. All my Haiti trips, they run together. So I've been so many times that I know often who I was with. I don't always remember. But you and I roomed together when we were there. And you had been there once before, I think.
Yes. And I was actually looking, I'm a journaler. So I was trying to recall the years that I went. And my memory is my first time was 2009. Then I went in 2010. And then I think I actually went one more time with a group from church, and then went with you, and there was 3 others, and it was a bit of a different trip, right? That's the one they were talking about. And I couldn't remember what year that was, Evan. Do you remember?
No, it probably was 5 years ago. Anyways, and so part of what we wanted to do is to kind of talk to you a little bit about about Haiti, about your experience there, what that was like for you, and what were some of your unique perspectives and some of those kinds of things. Can you think of like back to that first time arriving in Haiti? Was it all that you expected it to be, or was it like, what have you learned from your time and travels to Haiti about yourself?
Yeah. Actually, last night I was digging through all my journals. So I have maybe 5 or 6 of them. I don't write tons, but I remember I had written while I was in Haiti that first time, and I wanted to see what I said, and I could barely read my writing. I'm not gonna lie, it's horrible. I'm a lefty, and so I was trying to transcribe this thing and get myself in that place. And I was really like, especially artistic in writing back then, almost embarrassingly. So I'm not even going to read it, because it was like, okay, I need to get at the heart of what was being said here. But I do remember in reading it and sort of recalling that experience, it was not what I expected. The physical flying in there, I didn't Google any images of what Haiti would look like. I was just going in completely blank. And I remember there was an excitement of seeing someplace new. I'd never been overseas anywhere. I never experienced anything outside of North America at that point. I remember flying over, and the first thing seeing the little billows of smoke that would have been charcoal fires, right? And I was like, what is going on here? And then it was actually at that moment that I realized I'm in for something really different here. And I do remember I wrote in the journal that getting off at the airport, I remember writing like the Cape Haitian airport is small. I said, it's hard to take it serious. Like, this is an international destination. Like, what's going on here? And none of us spoke the language of Creole, and we are kind of getting filtered through this system that seems chaotic. And, you're handing over some money so that you can get your bags through. And then you're put into this holding area where there's like 100 Haitians outside looking at you through this chain link fence. And you're like, we're going to die this week. This is what's going to happen. And then, Dr. Mono comes and picks us up. And I wrote in the journal just the images of seeing garbage everywhere, and just like, what is going on in this place? It marked me. I'll say this. You don't go to Haiti and come back the same person. Mm-hmm. That's something that absolutely was true for me. And, when I look back at some of those journal entries, that's a long time ago now. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, I remember everything that was going on there. So when you talk about what marked you, I mean, the whole experience of being in a country that, is, some argue the poorest in the Western Hemisphere, the hungriest perhaps in the world, you can't leave there and come back the same person. I've literally had moments where I've been sitting at the dinner table with my family, particular, I think after the 2010 trip. I broke down and was sobbing, and my kids were very young at the time, and Dana was kind of like, what is going on? He's having a breakdown. And I said, I'm just thinking about these people, and I can't stop.
My observation, I totally agree. That's exactly. I went in July.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So and I went in a plane that didn't have, I probably was lucky. It was like an old DC-3.
Yeah.
Right. Is that what you went in with? Yeah.
We went with this company called Lynx Air.
Oh, okay. So that was fast planes at that time. That was a fast plane compared to the DC-3. You had to stop in the Caribbean and get gas.
Yes.
In the DC-3.
We did that once.
Yeah. And you could see through there. Like when you went to the bathroom in that plane, you could see like the water. There was cracks. You could see.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. I'm not even exaggerating. It was like, oh my gosh, that is the outside. I can see outside. Anyways, but now when you go and you fly in on a big plane that has air conditioning and all that stuff, when they open the doors, the amount of heat and humidity that greets you is alarming. There isn't any other way of kind of wording it. But those are some of the bigger things about what it feels like to be in that space. What was it like to start actually, you get out to Holimbe and you start meeting people. What was that like for you?
It was the people in Haiti that I met, every single one of them, they would greet you with a smile. And you begin to wonder what's going on here. These people have so little. You think about your context back home in Canada. I mean, the relative luxury we live in, and we really do. And we're all miserable,
Yeah.
and that's the stark contrast. You go down there and that's the question. I even wrote about this in my journal. I said, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like something's going on. How can these people be so genuinely joyful amidst their circumstances that is so crappy?
Yeah.
And how can these people furthermore be so generous to people like me who come in and, are whatever. The generosity marked me as well. And I wrote about that too. These people will give up the best of what they have for someone that, like us, who frankly didn't need it at the time. But that is the way that they want to show you how much this means to them, that you have come and visited and began relationship with them. And so for me, those two things, their joy and their generosity, is just like, that's a thing that I would say overarchingly, the people everywhere, I just saw it everywhere. And it's transformative going into a place like that. And it makes you want to, I wrote this line. I said, I'm drawn by the values. I think I used the word values down here. Maybe it's the wrong word. I said, I want this to be something that we do back home in Canada better. The joy, the generosity. How can we take a syringe and extract this and then shoot it into the people back in Canada so we actually live a little bit more like Haitians do in this way?
Because of lots of the trips I was going, you end up doing a lot of presentations when you come home. And sometimes in schools and different places like that, I'd find myself. And one of them, I started out my little presentation. It wasn't one of the schools. I was like, okay, so I went to the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere and found the richest people. And then I was like, and I just kind of moved on. And then, did my little, here's some of the things we were doing about what was up and all this. And during the questions at the end, a student was like, I was like, any questions? And I think it was a she. She was like, yeah, can you go all the way back to the very first thing you said when you came in here? Because I'm confused by those two words, the way that you described that. And I really do think there is a mystery to how humans are. And I do think that I attribute that to God's presence in people of all faiths, actually. But the mysterious capacity, and this is so interesting, the mysterious capacity to hold a really difficult life situation and a deep sense of joy and gratitude at the same time. It's mysterious. We shouldn't be able to do it. It's just like you can say, you can have all kinds of grief and also experience great joy. You can grieve your daughter's illness and be overwhelmed by the amount of love and joy you experience with her at the same time. That's what Haiti's like.
Yeah. And you know what? I think as I reflect on some of those folks there, at our best, I think we see the image of God in every person. I believe that every person that we see, the image of God is there. And that those two sort of components, the richness of the joy and the generosity amidst very trying circumstances, I just began to see those people as a real picture of Christ to me. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. If it's maybe a cheesy phrase, but if you want to know the Lord, you got to know the poor. And I think that's something that I've learned, and I sometimes get stuck in my own circles where I'm actually not witnessing much of folks who are dealing with things very different than I am. And there's opportunities for that in this city where I live in. But when you're down in Haiti, you just have a sense, people talk about this thin space, and there's a mystery that you mentioned, but God was very present to me in that place, in a way that I hadn't experienced. And I think there was something about God's presence in those people's lives. God is dwelling with the people, and this is seen in the Gospels. God is dwelling with people who are weary, who are sick, who are poor. Those are the people that Jesus, we read stories about this, and that is continuing to happen in the country of Haiti amidst like a disastrous history as a country. I've read some of the history and all the things that continue to happen. Jesus continues to dwell there, and people are indwelled by Jesus. And I see the image of God, the Imago Dei in these people in a way that I just hadn't quite experienced en masse before, like I had there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. It's, yeah. And I agree with you as well. Like you don't get to know God without experiencing the poor. And getting to know the poor and the stories and the relationship and the connection and all those kinds of things. And I think that's one of the things that gets really challenging, even when we talk, at arm's length about a people group. And, we've all heard, but Haiti has this voodoo and they made this thing. So this is like, and it's like, oh my gosh, like it's the dumbest thing. And it really is a protection for the folks who are making statements like that. That actually, no, if you went there, you would see that this is a thin place. Like you would experience a thin place. It's a wild experience, even in the nature of this conversation, that there are going to be individuals who don't understand that kind of mystery, that, a people with nothing are some of the richest people. When we talk things, and then we talk about what's really going on in somebody's life or story or whatever. You've always had a good gift of putting towards some of those in maybe a more artistic sort of a way. And in particular in writing songs, I got to tell you, like, this is not to pump your tires too much. We'll delete this so he doesn't feel too good about himself, but I will say it.
I'm hearing it real time, right? So
yeah, he's actually here listening. Your album that you put out is on my iPhone. I listen to it quite regularly. And even in this last season of my life, it has been a real source of encouragement. And, good Lord, feelings. I don't like emotions. Sometimes we need people who can articulate some of the brokenness in the world, but also the beauty in the world, so that we can, like this might even given our conversation from a few minutes ago, that there are people like me that have a difficult time staying connected to the emotional aspect of how we do life. And it's songwriters and poets and people like you that really, in a lot of ways, do help people like me to connect to my heart. And your music has been one of those sources for me. And so it's part of the reason why we wanted to talk a little bit about what goes into, for you, what goes into writing a song. What's that like? What's that like on the good times when you, I don't want to put too many words. I'm assuming some songs probably just come out of you. And some songs are like giving birth to a child that I don't know what that's like, but it doesn't look.
Nor do I.
It doesn't look great. It looks like it's a hard thing that they're going through. What has that been like for you in your own journey of songwriting and music and all of those things?
Yeah, I'll speak to some of that. I was telling Tara before through email that, you guys caught me at an interesting season songwriting wise, because, I articulated to her that I frankly am in somewhat of a dry spell. Writers would call it writer's block, working through some of that. And I won't talk too much about that right now, but historically, songwriting for me, some of the richest, I'll use that word again, the richest songs have come out of a place of poverty, right? Mm. So that's the same image we use of Haiti. And that's been the way it's worked for me. I think there has been some times where I've just kind of sat down. I'm like, okay, today I'm going to do some songwriting, but mostly songwriting comes in to play when there is a place of poverty I'm experiencing. And again, I'll use the language. There's a thin space that for me takes place in that as I think about, as I process something in my head, and then all of a sudden I'll look for, or maybe God will, I think, give me something that helps me articulate what I'm experiencing, and hopefully at its best, it's speaking truth to that situation. Not sugarcoating things, but then speaking the truth of hope into that situation, right? And so oftentimes what I've experienced in those moments, and a lot of them have been here in this building where I'm doing this interview right now in a room upstairs. I'll go there and I'll just sense like I need to sort of grab my guitar and start writing something down. I'll wait. And sometimes it'll actually be one line and a melody for a song, and I'll sing it, and it'll be by accident, it feels like. And all of a sudden, I'm an emotional guy, but I'll start crying. And I'm like, and what's happening in that moment for me is I feel like something was given to me as a gift in that moment. And so then it's like, okay, this is the work of let's build around this and let's see what else there is. And usually when I experience that, I know something is true and will strike somebody else the same way. Yeah. And that's been what's usually happened. That album you referenced, a lot of those songs were birthed in that sort of a context. And in a way that those songs actually spoke to me first, and not in a way that like, oh, great song, Cody, you should write more of these, but in a way of like, I think there's could be for other people that hear these, and other people can have seasons where they actually experience some of the joy and the truth in these songs as well.
It's been true for me. Absolutely. Yeah, it is a gift. And then being able to actually like play the guitar and sing on key is another gift.
Like you're also really good at it. So yeah, that too.
Well, I'll tell you this much. In church the other day, I was playing a set that was like extremely fast. And I actually told the congregation, this is an interesting thing about getting older in your position. I said, I used to be able to play songs like this far easier, and like I'm feeling it. My arm is super tired right now, so I feel like maybe I'm getting worse at guitar. But
I was going to ask you guys, we were talking about this the other day, because things in like both Evan and I do some work with the conference around the projects that we support in Haiti, and it's not great currently. Right now in Haiti. It's quite hard. And they're like people like Dr. Mono and our other leaders there are feeling quite discouraged. And I said to you, it's the complexity even around how unfair it is that I was just born here. Like my circumstances are just naturally so different. And I want to be really careful not to exploit them as like when we go on a trip and it's like we get this amazing experience and that's just the reality. I don't think we're doing that. I think we're trying to actually name and help give hope, like you said. But there is kind of like this tension in the unfairness of what it feels like if we get to go have this experience and then come back to our life. Mm-hmm. And how have each of you managed that as you go and come back and try and deal with all of the emotions that come with that trip?
Yeah, again, I actually did write about that too, because we were at a layover in Florida, which is the weirdest thing when you fly to Haiti. And you have a layover in Florida and you're at some like nice hotel. And again, you're living in the lap of relative luxury, and you've just come from a place where people are struggling to eat. Right. And there's definite guilt that's there. I experienced that. There is a sense of this isn't right. There's a justice piece to the conversation. But it's interesting. It's easy those things fade as time goes on and as your surroundings become more normative again in North America. For me, that you lose some of that initial shock of like, I'm disgusted by this scene right now. The two scenarios one that I just came from, the one that I'm in now. Evan, I don't know if that's kind of the way it is for you.
Absolutely it is. And I, with all of the places that I've traveled, there are these moments, right, where you just go, how, like, luck? Was it just luck that I landed in this place or that place and all those kind of things? And then I've done the, through Florida thing, and you go out for dinner or something, and it's like and had been just allowing myself to sometimes to try to reframe as much of it as I could out, because it was just too intense to even do that. And I remember one of the years I'd gone there, it was particularly dry and there was a lot of drought at that particular time that I was there. I came home and was the following week was putting my underground sprinkler system in. And I was sitting out on the lawn, hooking up this underground sprinkler system, thinking, I'm just going to spray this water on the grass so that it looks nice. Mm-hmm. And that was a heartbreaking moment. And I do remember breaking into tears and just going, oh man, Evan, how can you exist? Feeling so bad. Right. And then having to finish the sprinkler system and try to move forward and figure out these things and some of that kind of stuff. So I do think that there is this always going to be this tension. And I do believe that that tensions are the places where God shapes us and works off our edges. And my hope would be that out of every tension that we experience in our life, just like this or in other areas, that those are the places that we're able to see how God has taken us through those things and grown us and shaped us so that we can be more actually connected to each other. And when I say each other, I mean the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's what has grown out of me, is that sense of gratitude to have known and still know, and to still be in relationship with some of these incredible people who are continuing to care for their communities and their worlds and in the context that they're in, and that I'm not off the hook, that actually I need to care for the context and the people in my community that are close to me and the needs that are present in my need. And I have to look harder to find the needs in my community. It's not hard to walk around in Haiti and see the needs of the community. Yeah. But it's harder here in Chestermere. And I actually was talking about that at the food bank event. It's hey, we're in one of the most affluent cities in the province. And there are needs here.
For food.
Thousands of people. The statistics of the Chestermere Food Bank is they fed thousands of people in 2021.
Yeah, it's wild.
Right. So I do think that that's one of those spaces where God, I hope, is stretching us and growing us, and how we live that out or how we articulate that is it's growth. And I would say, even when, back to the music that you write and sing and share, it's really you sharing where you're growing, that you may or may not have figured out. I think one of your songs, right? I think you say can a dead man truly rise? Can it, right? And it's well, that's an important question. And it's actually okay to ask it. And right. And that, along with all the others, will the blind see? Will the hungry be fed? Well, being able to pose those questions for our culture is really important. And it comes out of your experience that you were given as a gift in Haiti.
Yeah. And that song you referenced, that song is, that one was about Haiti, and it was written, after the 2010 earthquake. And I had my first experience of Haiti the year before, and had already seen a place that was, frankly, where I in the song, I use the term where poor and sick and weary all meet in one place. It's this is what I experienced in that place. It's there was already so many things going on. And then you have this earthquake that happens. And I remember sitting, here watching it on the news, and we were going through the Gospel of John at church at the time. And there were, we were going through all the miracles of Jesus. And that's where those lines, as I'm watching this song unfold down here, I'm reading about the miracles in the Gospels, it was a legitimate question. It's like, so can this happen today? Because I think we need this. It was beyond the point. They were already sending humanitarian groups down there. And I was like, God, you need to show up now and do something. Sometimes with our prayers for Haiti and in the past, even myself, we're actually not angry enough. We don't call God out enough for these things. I had somebody once say of that song, they didn't like it because it didn't really mention God. And I was like, well, it presupposes that God's there. And I'm actually calling out, I'm lamenting. I'm saying, can these things still happen? Because we got a situation going on here. And there was a sense of urgency for me as I wrote those words. And there was a lament there too. Obviously, these are friends and people that I knew would be affected by this event. And so these words just kind of spilled out on the page, and it was very quick, actually. I think I had a lot of thoughts on that.
A lot of questions, right?
A lot of questions. And it's interesting over the years, that one, a lot of people have resonated with it when world events are happening and they're asking those same questions themselves. And it gives sort of the license to say, yeah, we need to seek God in this way, through questioning, through lament.
Yeah. Somebody doesn't like the song because you don't mention God in it. Well, you're legitimately asking the question, are you real?
Yeah.
Are you still here?
Mm-hmm.
So, right. And it's like, I do think that that's one of those things that I like about it. It's an authentic song, asking the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have learned in my life is my faith has been rarely about the answers, and so much more about the questions. And the more that I'm willing to ask the questions, this is another mystery. Is the more I ask the questions, the more I find God. Mm-hmm. But I don't find the answer. And we talk a lot about growth on the podcast, obviously, not just around Enneagram, but around all things. And when I'm doing coaching and doing all those things, and was pastoring before, it's like, if you don't know where you begin, then how do you know what is the next step of growth in your story? And the reality is, finding out where you begin is actually finding and mining for the truth of who you are and what's there, and being able to look at it with an honest set of eyes. I think our unwillingness to look truthfully at ourselves limits our capacity to grow. And it's songs like the one we were just talking about. What's the song called?
I gotta look on the album. I think it's called "Song for Haiti," I believe.
Oh, okay.
It might be called "Save Your People," "Song for Haiti."
Save Your People.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I debated that because I realized, it is for sure about Haiti, but I think it does speak to other world situations or things that we encounter, right, on a global scale. So
yeah, well, if you're really listening to it, it's also about what's happening in your own soul. Will I be healed? Mm-hmm. Will I rise again? Will I be able to all those things? And so there's a depth to that song on so many layers, and I love it. And there's a depth to you on so many layers, and I've always loved it. So I got to say, such a treat to have you kind of join us and give us an hour and 15 or 20 or whatever it's been. And man, I love you. You're a gift to this world.
You're going into your field a lot.
It's crazy.
I'm sensing a new era of Evan here. This is.
No, I still smiled all the way through it.
No, it's my pleasure. I was excited when you guys asked me to be on this, and it's a pleasure to talk to you both.
Yeah. Hey, I hope the next season is a season a little bit lighter, as you guys continue to grieve, you and Dana and Lucy, and then the rest of your whole family, I'm sure, is watching this thing, and also your other kids trying to figure out what's going on. And we sure appreciate you're willing to kind of share that little bit of that mess with us, and we hope that you know that you're not alone in it. And
I appreciate that, and you know what? I'm going to share about it because it's a huge part of my life right now. It would be, I feel inauthentic for me not to, but also we have not been alone. And like, even you guys have periodically, sent emails and asked. That means the world to me. I mean, that lets us know that, we're not alone in this. I mean, it's a tangible, there's other people that they're not just giving lip service. They're in this with you. So I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thanks so much again for your time, and we should let you go because I'm sure you have lots of pastor things to do.
Right on.
Hey, have a good rest of your day, and we'll let you go.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys too. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Can a dead man truly rise? Can the earth heal blinded eyes? Can you raise these tired hands? Can you heal this broken land? Can the needy get their fill? Can one loaf feed thousands still? Can the water turn to wine? Can you still give us a sign that you are near, that you can see? We're poor and sick and weary meet, that you have been and will always be defender of the least of these. God save your people now. Grasp us from death somehow. Raise up your strong right hand. Renew this land. God save your people now. Grasp us from depth somehow. Raise up your strong right hand. Renew this land. Can the needy get their fill? Can one loaf feed thousands still? Can the water turn to wine? Can you still give us a sign?
Hey, thanks for joining us. We'd love if you take a moment to rate, subscribe, and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, thanks for listening.